Good day, everyone. This is co-host John Schlarbaum, here to inform you that a new companion book to the podcast is now out. Titled Music Virgin No More, I delve deeper into how my weekly charts began and why the music from the early 80s still influences the preferences of millions of listeners 45 years later. Again, the book is Music Virgin No More, a fun and easy read filled with facts about the singles, albums, and groups you still love today. Purchase your copy on Amazon for only $15, and thanks for downloading today's episode, which begins right now.
CJBK London, it's 154.
Welcome, music fans, to the Music Virgins No More podcast. Now here are your hosts, John and Jason.
Hello, and welcome to the Music Virgins No More podcast. I'm John Schlarbaum.
And I'm Jason Kavanaugh.
For those new to the podcast, here's a little background. Jason and I have a shared admiration for older 1970s era Rod Stewart songs, yet disagree on the musical merits of his early 1980s output, which includes one of my favorite songs, Passion. And although there is a 20-year difference in our ages, we've remained friends for now almost 20 years.
And as for the show itself, it's based on John's memories of top 40 music between 1980 and 1982, when, very sadly, alone in his bedroom, he created 106 weekly music charts typed up on a small portable Smith Corona typewriter.
Each podcast will dive deep into these historic charts and discuss the music that, in part, became the soundtrack of my life.
On today's episode, we're going to be jumping ahead to chart number 6 for the week of September 27th, 1980.
What? And miss charts 4 and 5? How dare you, Jason?
Well, there's a reason for skipping 4 and 5. The first reason is that only one new single and one new group enter the charts, both of which we'll discuss today.
Oh, okay. That's fine. And what's the second reason?
Well, because chart-wise, nothing really interesting happened, unless you think Paul Simon's Late in the Evening moving up 7 spots is newsworthy.
Well, I'm sure something must have happened that you're missing or purposely trying to forget, but I'm sure we'll get there.
That Air Supply's All Out of Love peaked at number 4 after 4 weeks on the charts.
Now, as much as those two moves slightly impacted the middle pack of the singles chart, I was really getting to the fact I had a new number 1 song for both weeks. And it was the highly regarded AA side single, Cocaine and Tulsa Time, by Mr. Eric Clapton, dethroning Queen, see what I did there, with their now former number 1 song, Play the Game.
I guess I was so broken up about Queen's downfall that I didn't realize there must have been a new number 1 to take their place. Are you sure it wasn't Joe Walsh's All Night Long? Now that's a number 1 if I've ever heard one.
Sadly, Joe would only get to number 2 on my charts and be kept out of the top spots for 4 weeks in a row.
That seems criminal, John. How did his next single, Life of Illusion, rate in May 1981? Surely it went to number 1 in your charts, right?
Sadly, it didn't chart at all.
Well, normally my next question would be part of the regular segment at the end of the show, but I need to know this right now, John. What were you thinking?
Obviously, a huge mistake on my part. When I review chart 41 from May 30th, 1981, the top 3 singles were Limelight by Rush, Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes, and the previous week's number 1, You Better You Bet by The Who. So I suppose Life of Illusion could have fit in, but Joe Walsh was always kind of a mystery to me or on the fringe of my musical taste at the time. He was like a solo artist in the 70s, and I knew some of his earlier songs, but he was also now a full-time member of the Eagles. So for whatever reason, he wasn't hitting on all cylinders when it came to music I should have liked, but I didn't like at the time.
I guess I can see that. Do you have a favorite Joe song now that you're much older and wiser?
I would have to say it is Life's Been Good, which is the 9-minute album version, not the 4.5-minute radio version. And a close second would be a song called In the City, which was featured on the Warriors movie soundtrack, and it was a solo song. It was credited to just Joe Walsh, but then it was toughened up by the Eagles for their 1979 album, The Long Run album. Now, as a guitarist, Jason, because Joe's a big guitar guy, obviously, what would be your favorite song of his?
Life's Been Good is as good as it gets for memorable guitar parts. And his rhythm guitar work is on par with, my favorite, Lindsey Buckingham, and even just a little bit of Buddy Holly in there, to be honest. Which are big words coming from me. I've been into those guys since the beginning. And of course, I love his later work in the Drew Carey Band on the Drew Carey Show.
Always a classic. He just kept it going there with all the laughs. Now, in July 2015, I saw the Eagles in concert at Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, Michigan, and this was the full band. Glenn Frey was still alive. Don Felder, another classic guitarist, wasn't invited for numerous reasons. All everybody has to do is check out the documentary, The History of the Eagles, for more details on that feud. But anyway, so really, I was really excited to see Joe play guitar, yet all through the first half, he just seemed like a hired hand. He was dutifully playing and harmonizing all of the hits, but there was like no crazy Joe fireworks. And if you've seen any of his interviews in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, last week, there's always a crazy Joe aspect to him. And I was just wondering, honestly, if they had somehow lobotomized him for this tour.
And for the second half of the show?
Well, he was the best thing about the second half. He was suddenly alive and on fire, playing and singing like a madman on 8 of the last 9 songs. It was like a separate Joe Walsh concert with the Eagles backing him up. He played versions of his solo work In the City, Life's Been Good, Funk Number 49, which is a James Gang cover. And is it an actual cover if he was in the band? That's tricky.
That's tricky.
and obviously the classic Rocky Mountain Way with the talk box cranked up to number 11. And mixed in were classic Eagles songs that he had an integral part in making, such as Hotel California, The Long Run, and Life in the Fast Lane, which, before you ask, Jason, is my favorite Eagles song.
We're starting to sound like a Joe Walsh fan podcast. How do we get on this side topic again?
You didn't want to talk about Eric Clapton having the number 1 single on my chart for 2 consecutive weeks.
Right. Moving forward, there's no new single or groups entering chart number 4 on September 13th, but there was a new entry for chart number 5 for the week of September 20th, 1980. What was that new single, first off?
I'm glad you asked, Jason, because entering at number 13 was another one of your favorite groups, Cheap Trick. And the song was titled Everything Works If You Let It.
Okay, Eric Clapton, and now this, you're killing me.
Well, hear me out. If nothing else, I know you'll like the producer of the record, a Mr. George Martin, a.k.a. the Fifth Beatle.
Go on.
So the song was recorded during the 1980 sessions for their follow-up album to Dream Police, and it was going to be titled All Shook Up. But the song was only released on the Roadie film track, which also featured the Cheap Trick song Gonna Raise Hell. And that was taken from Dream Police, which is my favorite Cheap Trick album. Not that you care at all.
I don't.
You're such a Cheap Trick hater. Like, we went to a concert and we saw them in concert. Of course, you were there. The crazy thing was you were there for Def Leppard, and I was there, I think, for Cheap Trick because I'd never seen them. So the crazy thing about this non-single single was that the American and Canadian 45 featured no artwork, but was packaged in an official Epix record sleeve, which is the one I own. And from what I remember, it was included free in the All Shook Up album. Included
like
free
a bad toy in a Cracker Jack box.
Well, to you, maybe. Now, the funny thing is if you ask me right now what my favorite Cheap Trick songs are, this one would be in my top 3. But back in 1980, it only charted for 2 weeks and peaked at its debut 13th position. And of course, this is like one of those songs that today I think was a huge hit in my youth, but apparently it wasn't at all.
Cheap Trick, the poor man's Beatles, they sputter into and then quickly out of your singles charts.
Crazy.
What new group entered your chart 5 this week?
The Monks.
The chanting kind?
No, this was the English pop / punk / new wave band who were formed by 3 former members of the progressive / psychedelic / folk rock band, The Strawbs. And even with all those slashes in there, they were a very successful UK band from the 1970s. So around this time in 1980, punk was all the rage in Britain. And as a lark, these guys thought, hey, why not parody this movement? And wrote a tongue-in-cheek song called Nice Legs, Shame About Your Face that became a surprise top 20 hit. So with this success, Jason, they figure, hey, we'll write an entire album in the same vein. We'll call it Bad Habits. And on the album cover, we will put a hot-looking nun in full habit sitting on a stool, adjusting her silk stockings and smoking a cigarette. Everybody, Google it. You won't be disappointed. Unfortunately, things didn't quite work out as the band had hoped.
Even with such a great name and cover for the album, I think it's a brilliant name, actually. One of the members later commented in Mojo magazine that it was a bit of a problem when it was a hit. The album failed to produce further UK chart success, and the punk audience, they thought it was inauthentic, and they turned against them. And during a television appearance, Johnny Rotten derided the Monks as patronizing rubbish and a poor man's imitation of the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, he would know. And in this case, the theory that there's no such thing as bad press may not apply. And it's really not good when a Sex Pistol, of all people, calls you out about being inauthentic. But this is not where the Monks story ends. Against all odds, Jason, the group found fame, although I doubt any kind of fortune, in the music-loving country across the pond called Canada.
Well, and the band actually had some pretty good success over here. Their single Drugs in My Pocket climbed to the top 20 and number 4 on Toronto's Chum chart. Now, John, this is another drug song, 12-year-old John.
Doing drugs in my pocket, cocaine.
Yeah. What were you thinking at the time? Like, what did this song mean to you? Was it just a catchy song?
I think it was just catchy. I don't think it was. I'm not sure if I turned up the volume when my dad was wandering, the hallways in our house. Like, hey John, what are you listening to there, son? I'm like, nothing. I'm listening to Jim Neighbors. It's a new one of his.
Well, some of the radio stations probably agreed with your dad in saying that it was bad taste, and they refused to play it. But you must have heard it, at least, on one of your stations in London.
I'm thinking I must have, because, like, the crazy thing is when I look at the CJBK top 30 music charts in that period, Drugs in My Pocket never, ever charted. So maybe they just thought it was bad taste to actually list it on their weekly charts, but it was huge. It was huge when I was, this age.
Well, and here's the thing. Surprisingly, Bad Habits, the album, was never actually released in the US. EMI Canada, they fell in love with it. And by May 81, they sold 150,000 copies, which in today's world, 150,000 is actually amazing to sell.
And those are physical albums that you had to you had to drive to a store to actually pick. You don't just go on your app and push download and there it is. Right.
Well, and apparently most of those copies were sold in Ontario. So how many did you buy, John?
I just bought the one. I did have the CD many moons later though. But with them, they were selling all these albums without touring. But that all changed when they set out to do 3 weeks across the province.
Have you looked to see if they're still playing or anything like that? I should try and book them at my venue.
No, they're not. Whatever. They had that second album, and then I think they dispersed into the wind.
Which is too bad. God, at that time, they were playing some of the biggest and best venues. Toronto's Massey Hall is as big as you get in those days in Toronto and still.
Right. And again, it's like one of the places that they stopped in was Centennial Hall in London, which was, always, considered a very nice concert hall. But on the night the Monks played there, it was kind of wild, and my first ever rock concert, Jason.
I don't think I knew that.
I have pictures I can prove that I was there. So I took a camera in, I hid it from the security on my way in, and was terrified they would confiscate it when I was taking pictures. We'll post a couple of these treasured memories on our social media pages, so take a look. At the time, the band had just released their second album called Suspended Animation, which was only released in Canada because we were fans. And in the Canadian year-end album charts, Bad Habit was number 18, beating such big new releases by Paul McCartney, Jackson Browne, Burton Cummings, ABBA, and Barbra Streisand, to name a few. And I'm sure we'll hear more about the Monks in the coming weeks.
Okay, and aside from being afraid of your precious Kodak Instamatic camera would be seized, do you have any other memories from that night?
Only that it was festival seating, meaning there were no reserved seats. And again, this is my first concert, so I really don't know what to expect whatsoever. So this first come, first serve thing was very exciting and probably terrifying at the time. But I got a floor spot fairly close to the stage. But the biggest moment was when Drugs in My Pocket started to play and the lead singer began to throw M&M candies into the audience.
I'm afraid to ask because you're a bit of a souvenir collector from all your days going to concerts and writing these charts. Do you still have some of these M&Ms?
I don't have any moldy M&Ms at all. I don't even have the ticket stub, which I'm kind of surprised I don't have, unless it's in like a photo album somewhere. But the biggest part about all of this, Jason, this one concert was I was a concert virgin no more. Now, how about you, Jason? What was your first rock concert?
I think you already know this, but yeah, I've told you this story. But before I knew there was such a thing as an opening act, all I knew is I was going to see the Beach Boys.
Beach Boys!
And, the lights go down and a band comes out and I hear Fortunate Son. And it's not the Beach Boys, it's CCR. So 9-year-old me got to learn about, his first concert, first of all, but an opening act. And it just happened to be one of my other favorite bands. And that changed everything for me. I mean, I work in concert production now, basically because of that night.
Now, was your musical hero Brian Wilson with the Beach Boys at the time? And was it John Fogerty fronting Creedence Clearwater Revival?
I don't know. I don't think I really got the Brian Wilson genius thing yet. I was still pretty young and they didn't have internet to sort of read about this stuff. So I, not really in that aspect, but I will say the first time I paid attention to production and sounds in a song was probably when I was 4 or 5, when Good Vibrations came on the radio. That just changed my life. I thought about everything differently. I heard every nuance of every song
right
after that. And that's shaped everything that I do with my life now. And then, no, it wasn't John Fogerty. It was, I can't remember his name right now, but it was...
Was it a brother Fogerty?
No.
Some other
guy, but it was Elliot from the Cars on guitar, which was amazing.
Elliot Eastman?
Yeah, Elliot Eastman, yeah. What a great concert. I couldn't have asked for a better first concert.
Now, did you have a Kodak Instamatic with you to take pictures at all? And who took you to the concert?
That would have been my mother's twin, Della. She took me. And no, I didn't have a camera at all. I still have the concert ticket somewhere, I think. I've moved too many times and who knows where it is, but...
You've moved at least twice since I've known you.
Yeah. Twice a year, maybe.
It's something like that. Now, of course, you and I have attended concerts together. We went to see Boston with the original legendary lead singer Brad Delp and the band's mad musical scientist and celebrated mastermind Tom Schultz in Toledo, Ohio. That was July 2004. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also went to see Def Leppard / Cheap Trick double bill in Detroit a few years later. Do you recall anything about those shows?
Lots, actually. They were, again, kind of formative. The first one, the Boston show, I had just broken up with my high school sweetheart, Amanda.
Oh, Amanda.
And, oh, Amanda. And, Boston has the song Amanda. And there in the lobby, they were selling drinks. There was the More Than a Feelin', which was, some sweet drink. And then there was the Amanda. And I was underage in Canada, let alone the US. And you went and bought me an Amanda to help console my broken heart at a concert.
And our friendship was cemented.
Yeah, it really it was kind of one of the first moments for us. And then, of course, the Cheap Trick and Def Leppard double bill. Cheap Trick, they were just all a bag of tricks. If they just focused on playing their music as best as they could, I probably would have had a great time. But I was so annoyed by Rick just picking up guitar picks off of his mic stand and throwing them more than he played guitar. And just cheesy effects and lights coming out of fake guitar amps. It was just, at the time, it was inauthentic.
It was too much.
And drove me crazy.
I remember, like I said earlier, like I went there, I had seen Def Leppard 3 times already, twice during their Hysteria tour in in 87, 88 in Toronto and Hamilton. And then we went to, see them in Detroit. So I'm like, I've seen these guys, but I've always loved Cheap Trick. So I was so excited to see them. And then they came out and did 10 songs, and that was it. And some of the songs, I'm like, why are you even playing this? Why are you wasting our time? You have 10 songs. I will pick your 10 songs for you. And it just sort of came and went. So even I was kind of disappointed in seeing them the first time, aside from going, I saw them for the first time, which was good. And then probably about 10 years ago on one of our first dates, my partner Lori took me to go see Cheap Trick by themselves at the Soundboard at Motor City Casino in Detroit. And again, they were fantastic then because they had a whole concert. They just didn't play 10 songs, which I just thought, wow, you guys are going around the country with Def Leppard, and they're only allowing you 10 songs. It seems like they should be very thankful for you guys for what you did in the 70s for them to be here. But apparently, Joe Elliott and the boys, they had other things on their mind, but they were fantastic. Do you remember anything specific sound-wise of Def Leppard aside from Joe Elliott always sounds fantastic?
Well, first on Cheap Trick, if you would have chose the set list, it probably would have been a better show, for sure.
Okay.
And then Def Leppard, they were amazing and they sounded incredible. So I, 18-year-old, 19-year-old me, whatever it was at the time, went directly to the soundboard after the concert to talk to the sound guy. I was just starting to get interested in this stuff, and I complimented him on his mix, and then I looked over his shoulder, and there behind him was a rack of Antares Auto-Tune units, and this is kind of the first year or two that these things really even existed live, I think. I'd have to double check the dates, but so excited me points it out to the sound guy, like, oh, you're using Auto-Tune. That explains why the harmonies were so tight. And he slammed the road case shut and locked it and said, Def Leppard doesn't use Auto-Tune. Now, that didn't detract from such a great concert. It was awesome. And I have nothing against Auto-Tune. Well, we can get into that in another show.
Did you learn to mistrust audio engineers, sound engineers from then on, though?
I don't know about...
Until you became the perfect one, obviously.
I don't know. I don't know. Mistrust. It actually kind of opened my eyes that, sound could be viewed more like film and TV, where, there are smoke and mirrors and stuff, and it's all part of it and not detracting from it.
And that's still happening today. That argument that you just said it's part of the show. You want them to be singing. When I go to a show, I want them. I remember going in London again in high school and going to see Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And this is 1982. They're with I Love Rock and Roll, the album, everything. They're top of the heap. And going in there and walking out going, sounded just like the album. And I love that. And then I've also gone to concerts where I'm like, wow, I wish they put an auto tune on him because he just sucked the whole night. It was horrible. So to me, I like all the sweetening and auto tuning because I'm so far back probably with the seats that you're like, I just want to like see the guy jumping on the stage and like singing like he sang in 1978. I'm fine with that. I will go with the illusion.
At that Joan Jett concert, just a little aside, did they play Crimson and Clover back then?
I think they did. And I got to tell you, I listened to that album out in my sort of man cave where I've got like a little record player. I listened to that album start to finish. It's a very short album to start off with. And that is still one of the songs that make me cringe or want to just move on to the next song. I don't know why. It just to me was all
Which one?
Crimson and Clover. I just never liked that song, their version of it. I know you probably love it, and it was a huge hit, and people love it, but I'm just like, wow, it just seemed... The album now seems very dated, and it's very, aside from I Love Rock and Roll, a lot of the songs just sound like you're just yelling, which in 1982 was probably fine, but listening to it now, it's like, this is kind of shrill. I still like the songs, and I know the songs, but I wouldn't put it on again for a while. But every once in a while when I go out and do writing or do research or something out in this detached garage that we made into this, honestly, it's like a little office out there. Sometimes I reach over and I just blindly pull out an album from my milk crate of albums, and I just put it on and listen to it and go, oh, and that was the one, Joan Jett, just a few weeks ago. So
I don't like that version of the song that much either. I love the song in any version because the original Tommy James version is amazing. I think Prince did it better than Joan Jett, though.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not even sure I've never heard his version. I will listen to it tonight, okay?
Great.
After we tape this, I will listen to it because, I've made you listen to, Cheap Trick's Everything Works If You Let It from Roadie, and, we've discussed a lot of Cheap Trick tonight. But as for Rick Nielsen's, those guitar picks that, you were annoyed by, I believe I have one of those. I found it on the stage after they left at the end of the concert. I literally went down from our seats up in the balcony, and I'm like, I'm going to go right down. I'm going to be right back. There must be one on the floor. And I went down to the empty floor, and there's nothing there. And I looked up on the stage, and there was one of these guitar picks.
Well, lucky you.
I think I have a Rick Nielsen one, and I believe I have a Jason Kavanaugh one as well.
Wow.
Somewhere. I think those are the two. So, like, really, Jason, if we close the show right now, I think it's been a good one. What do you think?
What about chart number 6's 5 new singles, the fastest mover and the new number 1s on both listings?
Well, Jason, if you insist, while we're here, we've got the mics open and everything. So, all right, so let's recap the top groups of the week first, because there was indeed some big movement the previous week when Queen took over the top spot from Paul McCartney and Wings, who slipped down to number 2. Queen would stay there for the next 10 weeks when an even more monumental milestone in young John Schlarbaum's life would occur and change my life forever, but we'll get there in a later podcast.
And the only group mover was the Monks, moving from number 6, where they debuted the previous week, to number 4 behind Pat Benatar, sitting at number 3. Now, to recap the singles charts, where there was a lot going on, first off, let's look at the bottom third for the week. All 5 songs are heading downward. Everything Works If You Let It by Cheap Trick.
Yay!
My Mistake by the King Bees.
Boo.
Emotional Rescue from the Rolling Stones. Clones, great song by Alice Cooper. And All Out of Love by Air Supply.
Now, filling out the middle of the rankings, there were 4 new singles, and that's something that I don't think ever happened again, having 5 new singles in total for 1 week. I believe I looked up in my database. I do have a database for all of the charts, Jason, and I did that now. I didn't do that back then because, a personal computer hadn't been invented yet. But there was a couple of times during the 106 charts where 4 new singles did enter. But this week, 5 new singles entered. And pretty much all of them are very much still played on radio today, except maybe number 7. So they are I'm All Right by Kenny Loggins, which is the soundtrack hit from the movie Caddyshack. Games Without Frontiers by Peter Gabriel. He was Genesis' former frontman in the 70s. You Better Run by Pat Benatar. The aforementioned Drugs in My Pocket by The Monks. And Play the Game by Queen, which was the former number 1 song.
At this point in your record-buying career, did you know who Kenny Loggins or Peter Gabriel even were, John?
Not really. No, I knew Kenny Loggins. He had previous hits, the 1978's "Whenever I Call You Friend," which was a duet with Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac. She hadn't gone solo yet. And also 1979's "This Is It" with additional vocals by co-writer Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers. And that song won the Grammy Award in 1981 for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance. But I didn't know who Loggins was, or that in the 1970s he was part of a duel with Jim Messina and had already sold an amazing 16 million records by the time they broke up in 1976. For me, every year, all of a sudden, this Kenny Loggins had a new solo hit. And I'm like, wow, this guy's really on a roll. I really no clue who he was. Obviously, now I do.
Okay, and as an aside, was there a soft rock artist that Michael McDonald didn't work with during this time period, adding his distinctive vocals to hit songs?
I don't think so. I think every single one, he was like a paid person. Artists would just come into one studio and he'd already be there. So he was very active. He was very active in the late 70s and 80s. Now, as for Peter Gabriel, I didn't know his background at all. Zero. In earlier 1980, I was given the album Duke by Genesis for a birthday present. And that was my first introduction to the band. But by then, Phil Collins was their frontman at the time. And I really remember like Duke being sort of the first concept album. I think that's what they were trying for. From this prog group that I really, again, had very little understanding of or who they were. I didn't know their earlier stuff at all.
And then there's You Better Run, the lead single off of Pat Benatar's second album, Crimes of Passion. And as a piece of trivia, this music video was the second one ever to air on MTV in 1981, right after Video Killed the Radio Star.
Ow, ow. Now, people who know the song will understand what I just did there. I didn't have some kind of, fit of some sort, or that wasn't an effect we put on. But listen to the song. Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. Now, as we know, I was a huge fan of her first album called In the Heat of the Night.
You're also a big fan of the album cover.
Well, that is true, although my dad, the minister, wasn't a big fan. So once he saw the album propped up on my desk as I was doing homework and asked, "Who is that hussy?" I had no explanation. I'm like, her name's Pat, I guess. Anyway, getting back to Pat's albums, while on a family vacation, I think somewhere in the U.S., I remember seeing Crimes of Passion in a record store, and the cover is a bit tamer, I'll admit. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think I bought it there and smuggled it home when the vacation was over. Now, you would think that with all the publicity of You Better Run's release, her first album was still very high in the charts at the time. The lead single, it was being prominently played on the new MTV channel, that the song would have charted higher than number 42 on Billboard in the United States and number 76 on Canada's RPM magazine charts. It really doesn't make sense looking back at it now, because it is a very good song.
Well, and the next single off this album is really considered to be the one that she's best known for, Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Written by, and I didn't know this until we started talking about this, but Toronto's own Eddie Schwartz.
Do you know Eddie?
I find it interesting. Oh, no, I don't. But what I find interesting is that just in 3 weeks, chart number 9 for October 18, this song debuts at number 7, meaning she'll have 2 singles off the same album in the top 10. Can you explain how this is possible, John?
Well, I think as we discussed in episode 1, I had an unofficial rule which stated I basically had to physically own a copy of a song for it to chart. So even a few weeks later into chart making, this rule had to be dismissed for financial reasons. Therefore, when I bought the album Crimes of Passion, I could add its most recent single, You Better Run. But by then, in the real world, Jason, outside of my bedroom, there was a real world, apparently. That song was on its way down the charts, and Hit Me With Your Best Shot was released. So, it all makes sense. And one final fun fact about You Better Run, it was also on the movie Roadie soundtrack beside Cheap Trick.
Fabulous. Okay, well, now with that settled, let's see what your top 5 singles were.
It was very complicated making these charts when I was 13 and 14. It was just, I don't understand how I did it for 2 years, but I did. And that's what we're here celebrating. Okay, carry on. The top 5 singles, what were they?
All Night Long by Joe Walsh, down from number 2. Late in the Evening, Paul Simon, unchanged from the previous week. Upside Down by Diana Ross, unchanged. And Cocaine Tulsa Time, Eric Clapton, bumped out finally from the number 1 spot. Which leaves us with one more song in this week's highest debut and fastest mover. John?
And it is one of only 2 songs to debut at number 1 in the 106 weeks of charting. And that would be Another One Bites at Us by Queen. Now, technically, Jason, this was the 4th release from their album, The Game. And it is credited as the band's best-selling single, having sold 7 million copies worldwide. Now, it was written by one of their great songwriters, bassist John Deacon, and the song is known for its bass line, apparently inspired, stolen, imitated by the song Good Times by the disco group Chic. Now, in a magazine article, Chic co-founder Bernard Edwards, remember him, Jason, from last week's discussion about working with diva Diana Ross, he stated, that Queen record came about because that Queen bass player spent some time hanging out with us at our studio. Nothing. I don't think he was really angry about it. He wasn't going after them for royalties. But now, as a bassist yourself, Jason, what does the song mean to you?
Well, first, that bass line, it's about 110 beats per minute. That's a tempo that gets you moving.
Okay.
And I think it was a wise choice. Now, was it intentional? I don't know. And it's very rare for a bass line to be out front like that. You know, if I asked you to sing the bass line to Lady Madonna, could you? Probably not.
Maybe not.
But
you wouldn't want me to.
No.
You don't want me singing anything, really. But
the proverbial you, John.
Okay, yeah. Good.
But if you ask somebody to sing the bass line to, any part of Another One Bites the Dust, I think people would lead with the bass line before they would get to the lyrics. It's such a iconic part, which is very rare for the bass.
Right. So do you think it's a complete ripoff of a Chic song, or are there things where it is so close that really it's an homage to the Chic song, or there's only so many bass lines and the way that they produced this one and put it way high in the mix, that made all the difference? Because that bass line could have been sort of hidden in the mix if you wanted it to.
Yeah. It's hard to say. Like when you zoom out on a decade of music, a lot of things sort of sound like each other, and it's hard to not, consciously or self-consciously be inspired by things that you hear on the radio, in the car, in the grocery store. So it could be something that's 10 years old because you've heard it in the grocery store, but now it's inspired you now. Was this like a Led Zeppelin situation where they just, full out stole it? No,
they didn't.
I don't think so.
The courts say no, Jason.
Well,
don't even talk to me about Led Zeppelin. No, they had it. It was, that seems like, I don't know how they never really got the judgment against them, but anybody who's wondering what we're talking about, just Google Stairway to Heaven court case, and you will find out very quickly. You'll have examples of the 2 songs.
There's a whole bunch of songs that they took from old bluesmen, like word for word.
Right.
Led Zeppelin is kind of like the British Museum, you know. That belongs to us. Well, what does it really? I mean, you took it from India, 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. They want it back anyway. We got off track, John. For those keeping track of your charts,
Right. So, but okay, we'll stay on track with my charts. Another one bites the dust is Queen's second number one single from the Game album. However, for me, it is really the fourth number one song from that album, because in October 1979, before I started this little charting hobby, Crazy Little Thing came out, and that was followed by Save Me, the song, in January 1980. And both of those songs were like my favorite songs for week on end. And if I would have had charts back then, they would have easily been number one hits. And just as a fun fact, Crazy Little Thing Called Love has to be the most played 45 I've ever owned. I'm surprised I didn't wear the grooves out.
I'm sure getting the album with it on helped out.
Possibly. Now, we are not done with Queen or the album The Game, as next week's chart debuts a new weekly ranking, the top 10 albums, and you'll never guess what debuts at number one, Jason.
As long as it's not Eric Clapton or Cheap Trick, I think we'll be fine. Now, for comparison purposes, for the same week, London's CJBK Radio's number one single was Sailing by Christopher Cross, and RPM Magazine had a new number one, Magic by Olivia Newton-John, while Billboard's number one remained Diana Ross, Upside Down. Now, going back to chart number 4 for September 13th, I do have one other important question.
Go ahead.
You scotch taped over
Did I?
a new list of the top 4 songs.
Maybe.
Do you know what's underneath that tape? Is there a different order that we have recapped today?
You're really hoping that somehow it involves cocaine, right? Not the song, not the actual, substance. But looking at all 106 charts that I have, the physical ones, it does appear that after, dutifully typing up my, important lists, either Saturday night or Sunday morning, that for whatever reason, I've changed my mind about the orders of songs or albums. So when I carefully pull back this sort of taped on piece of paper, there is in fact a completely different order of the same top 4 songs.
Okay, so in the official chart, they were in order. Number 1, Cocaine, Tulsa Time, Eric Clapton. Jumping from number 6 in its second week. Number 2 was All Night Long by Joe Walsh. Number 3, Upside Down by Diana Ross. And the previous week's top song, Play the Game, tumbling to number 4. But now you're saying that wasn't the original order?
I guess that's what I'm saying, because the original order was number 1, Play the Game by Queen for the 4th straight week, followed by number 2, Cocaine / Tulsa Time by Eric Clapton, followed by All Night Long by Joe Walsh, and Diana Ross's Upside Down at number 4.
So Eric Clapton technically should have only been number 1 for 1 week instead of 2.
Well, obviously I came to my senses in the nick of time to make sure 40 plus years later, you and I would be arguing this point. If nothing else, Jason, I like to play the long game. Now, this concludes our review of chapter number 6 of 106. So only 100 more to go, Jason. For the week ending September 27th, 1980. Be sure to like and follow our Facebook and Instagram pages, where you'll find relevant pictures, informations, and of course the actual typewritten chart to review and debate among yourselves, friends, and families. And please note that chapters number 4 and number 5 that we also discussed today will be on all our social media pages too.
Feel free to give us your comments about the show and leave comments about the songs you loved in the early 80s, even if they didn't make John's charts. We'd love to hear from you.
And be sure to check us out next week when we'll find out if Queen can hold the number 1 spot in the singles, groups, and new album charts. Until then, keep rocking like there's no tomorrow, and thanks for listening.
The Music Virgins No More podcast was recorded in Amherstburg, Ontario and Lloydminster, Alberta.